What's up, fearless followers? I'm here with your word of the day, and we are in a new series and a new section of reading. We're going to be going through the story of Ruth and learning how God gives us a glimmer of hope in our lives. And before we start, I have a question for you. Have you ever gone through a really hard time? Have you ever gone through a hard season of life where, if you're honest, you just didn't know how things were going to turn out, and it was just dark and tough? That's exactly how our story starts off. We read that in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. And they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her two sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, and the other Ruth. And after they had lived about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her two sons and her husband. So there is so much in here. This story starts out in such a tragic way. First, there's a famine in the land, and the focus of this story is Naomi, and that she moves from her homeland to Moab, which is enemy-occupied territory. This is where no Jew wants to live, and they move there, and they settle there, and over the course of 10 years, she loses her husband, and then she loses her two sons. And she is stuck in a foreign land without any of her family. Now, she has two daughters that married her sons. We read Orpah and Ruth. But the situation for Naomi is really dire. What we fail to understand, usually because of our society and culture, is that women, they couldn't own property. They couldn't have the same rights as men, and so they were dependent on their husbands or their sons to be the ones to provide. And so in one fell swoop, Naomi is destitute, and she has nothing. She's grieving the loss of her husband, the loss of her sons, but she's also grieving the reality that her life will never look the same for her again. And she's on in years, and the likelihood of her getting married again is tough. So this is a really bleak situation for Naomi. And as we enter into this, there's a couple of elements of this story that are really important. One, God is only mentioned a handful of times in the story of Ruth. And Yahweh, the God of the Bible. And yet, we see God in the story through the interactions of the people that come Naomi's way. You have to look for it. It's kind of like a story within a story, but in every character, in every interaction, in every situation, we see the qualities and characteristics and truly the character of God fleshed out in the story. And so as we enter into this, we're going to see that through the love and kindness and faithfulness of others, God shows Naomi a glimmer of hope at the end of each story, at the end of each section of the story. And so in this, if you've ever been in a situation that was just hard, maybe you're in one right now, maybe it's just tough for you right now, there's a few things that we need to understand as we begin this story. Number one, God is always with us in the midst of hard times. Always. And number two, there is always hope because He's with us. So I don't know if you've had a tough week or a tough year. It's been a tough 6 months for a lot of us. And maybe you're looking for some hope. And I want to tell you that today, there is hope for you. Even in the most dire of circumstances, Naomi's story is written in such a way where we are led to think this is a catastrophe. This is the perfect storm of pain and hardship. And yet, we will find as we go through, that God provides hope every step of the way. And that is also true for our lives. So today, for our fearless word, I am praying hope for you today, that you will see hope, experience hope, embody hope, and you will live in hope for a tomorrow that is filled with God's provision and God's goodness. Grace and peace to you. We'll see you later.